right, welcome to the Stampscapes test lab. We have this piece by Deanna Tubb-Sedillo. Really cool kind of, I don't know, maybe a pre-sunset type of situation here. I see this as being water down below. It's really quite versatile. You can turn this into terrain and color it green if you want to for grass or anything like that. But it seems like she's kind of set up a really good scenario for it to be water. So I'm going to do a composition that I've been thinking about for quite some time, and that's, just someone out in the water doing something, recreation. And we have this new dog stamp right here where it's kind of sitting looking out, into, whatever, the great beyond or wherever it's looking. But I thought, it'd be kind of cool to have someone in the water, and it's like the dog's kind of waiting on shore for its master or whatever. And we're going to start off here with one of the cabins from Nature set number 34, I believe, the Cozy Day cabins. I'm standing up, giving good pressure to this because it's a large stamp, and I want this ink to transfer onto this pre-printed paper. I believe this is a test paper from Deanna. It's larger than the quarter page, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sizes that come in packs, but I know you can contact her and see if she has these available just herself. The other ones are sold by, the packs are by, I can't remember the name of the company that sells them. Sorry. All right. There we go, like that. We have that cabin right there. Okay, now that cabin is in a lot of reds there. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this out as I've been doing with other pieces, and I'm going to make that into a, I don't know, what are we calling that? Kind of a paper, it's not paper piecing, but I don't know, kind of a, not merging. I don't know what I'm going to call this technique here, but just, I'm going to stamp it out on this antique paper because it has all these cool kind of tones and textures in there inherently. Oops, I didn't stamp out the entire thing there. Maybe I'll stamp it in a little bit of a lighter area. I just need the cabin portion here, so it's roughly right there. Let's see. Let's get a better impression here. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do here. Now, this isn't going to be a really easy cutout. I just need to cut it out right in here. And what we're going to do is go like this. We don't need to cut out all the trees or anything like that, okay? And just cut out the easy to trim out areas like so. Okay. I didn't used to be up for doing a lot of trimming. But if something takes me, I don't know, 15 seconds, I don't know, for the trimming portion of it, doing this whole thing, stamping it out and printing it, I don't know, a couple minutes or something like that. Not too bad, but this is what this will look like right there. So it really stands out against that background. Now we'll integrate that here in a bit, okay? But this makes stamping on these pre-printed background papers a little bit more versatile with open styles of imagery, meaning that you can stamp some type of image in there that has an open area. It's not silhouette, in other words, against kind of different colors and patterns within there. Now I'm doing it on this brown paper because I thought it would integrate very well with this. And it kind of looks, you know, earthy and kind of rustic that way too. But you can do it on a, you know, a piece of white paper or something like that too. All right, there you have that. Kind of stands out against that background. We'll illuminate it and everything like that and kind of, like I said, integrate it a little bit more, or a lot more, as we go. I'm going to use this pier right here. Let's see. Yeah, let's go this way. I'm trying to think of where I want that kind of our figure to go. No, maybe I'll put it up here. I'm trying to leave room here. I guess, let's go. Okay, I was going to stamp out a little bit more up here, but let's go with about a half of it like this. Press and hold to get a really good transfer of ink. This paper's matte, so it does accept ink very well. But again, I like to hold and kind of hold down a little bit longer just to make sure. Okay, let me print this out. This will be the first time I'm using this dog stamp here, I believe. I don't think I've used them yet. Okay, I'll go about right here. Like that. Sitting out at the edge up here. And let's see. Let's get another little piece of this same stamp. These stamps are designed to be used in their entirety, or for the left or right portion, or the left and right portion within the same scene too, okay? All right, now right here we have this light coming through right here, so that's kind of the one of the main focal points of the scene, so I don't want to cover that up completely. You want to leave your light sources if there is a light source, whether you're creating it yourself or stamping it on top of like a pre-printed paper like this. That's what I would recommend just in general, because those kind of sources of light tend to be a fairly strong kind of visual kind of focal point of a scene. Okay, so you see that light can be coming through here. I did one yesterday with kind of light beams, and I don't know, this one's like looking like it's a prime candidate for doing the same type of technique. Okay, let's see. All right, now let me take a look at a couple of these different paddle borders. And let me see if my scale is good here. She has to be a little bit higher up. Or I can make a smaller one too. Let's see. Let's take a look at a couple of these, and let's take a look at scale here. Okay. That's pretty good. She would have to be about right here, I think. Yeah, let's go with that one. This other one, the paddle border, would be kind of a little bit higher up. Yeah, like about like that. That doesn't look too bad either. I don't want it to look like she's like completely just paddling, you know, really far away from, you know, her dog, though. So let's go about right here. Yeah, she's just like going out, you know, get sunset. It's always fun to do kind of things in the water or the ocean around sunset. It's such a dramatic setting like that. To do something like that, I used to surf, and that was definitely by far my favorite time to surf was at sunset. Never good waves at sunset time. It was, you know, the morning time, I don't know, it always had the best waves, but definitely the most scenic and majestic time was around sunset. Watching that warm light on and through the waves. Adding in some tiny rocks just to ground our area in here a little bit more. And let's see. Always some foreground in here to frame the scene off and to expand the field of view. Okay. All right, now there is some white light in there, so I'll utilize that strategically. Now let me try to, one of the things that I generally do, or I don't know if I generally do, but that I think to do is to try and harmonize, now that we have these images in here, I try to go off kind of the color schemes that we have on here. I could bring some of that tone down here in the water, kind of to represent, kind of that, some of that reflecting light. Okay, so in colored pencils, it would probably be something like these two right here. And then the thing that I look right here is there's some grayscale tone up there, and there's a little bit of blue like that too. I don't know which one it is, so I'm, you know, see it as a mixture because Deanna's probably using more than one tone, or she's combining things, so it's becoming a fusion of a couple different colors, so it's not like, you know, you have to go with one tone. In fact, it would probably look better with, you know, multiples. Okay, so there's some color right here, but then we'll also use blacks, and it looks like I have a gray pencil here, so I'll go for some black and gray tones in here as well. And then we'll start addressing some of these trees in here. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'll go with the some shading first. I don't know, for me that's something that's kind of easy to do. And I'll just, these images have been stamped in there, so now I'm giving them some visual weight. Okay, so at the base of these rocks down here, I'm just kind of darkening them in a little bit. And you could, then you go about midway up some of these rocks in here. Just so the tops of the rocks are a little bit lighter, and then in the water, the edge of the water like that, I tone in like so. Now there's this little shoreline and some reflections down here as well, but by and large, you kind of go at the base of these rocks here. Again, I'm kind of extending the imagery out a little bit like that. Okay, and then our character here is also kind of Casting a shadow back this way. And so the light is coming from here, so the shadow is kind of going back in a direction consistent with the source of light. Okay, so going this way a little bit. Here's the dog here. And the dog can be casting a little bit of a shadow too. All right, so everything's kind of anchored down a little bit. I can go with a little bit more. Let's see. Maybe, I don't know. We wouldn't be able to see too much of a shadow on this pier here. It might have been interesting to stamp that pier in the wood grain. Now that I'm thinking about it. This isn't wood grain, but this aged kind of look. That's what I did yesterday, and I really like the look of that. All right, so that is some black, but I kind of used it as gray. Now let me actually use some gray. By the way, this is these are watercolor pencils, so I could go in here and use a little bit of that water reactive or water soluble characteristic of it, but I'm just using it here as a kind of more so like a colored pencil. I really like the feel of these watercolor pencils as colored pencils, as just coloring pencils, so that because they're just so soft. I knew someone that used to do that. They didn't really. They probably use colored pencils too, but they really liked using watercolor pencils and just, you know, like I said, just coloring with them, not using it as watercolor. All right, so that is that. Okay, now let's bring in a little bit more of this lighter kind of bluish tone into the piece. Yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. See, that really kind of matches that tone right up there. I don't know if you can see it too much. I just added a little bit. So in this, we're keeping kind of in the spirit of the color scheme, the existing color scheme. This one's just a colored pencil. You know, you could use a watercolor pencil too. And I'm just going with a really light touch here. All right. Now let's bring in some of these warm tones into the trees here. Okay. I am mixing it with a lot of the tones that already existed on the paper. Okay. And this is kind of a, you know, colored pencils are somewhat transparent. I mean, unless you're doing like something on kind of a matte textured piece of paper where you can really layer a ton of the, you know, colored pencil media on top. But on this one, I really can't do that because this paper it's matte, but you know, it's not super textured where I can probably put down, I don't know, whatever, 10 layers of colored pencils or something like that. All right, there's some of those yellow tones in there. These are larches in here, which are kind of like deciduous conifer trees. So, unlike most of the conifers with evergreens, you know, the pine needles, they don't shed, but on large trees they do. I wonder why nature did that. All right, so there we go. Brought in some of that over here. Okay. Or, yeah, some of that tone over here. Let's warm it up a touch. Let's go with a little bit more orange in here too. One little kind of a thing that or detail that I'm doing over here is I'm leaving a little bit of the left side of these trees a little bit lighter because the light is kind of coming from, well, it's kind of coming from above, but it's a little bit more of this interior areas where the light is coming from. So I'm kind of darkening it over here. Just like over here, it just inherently got darker because that's the color of the tones in the on the paper back in there. Okay, now I'm going to bring in, just for a little bit of a hue change, I'm going to bring in some greens here. And I'll add in some little kind of grassy textures, maybe, right along this shoreline. Just to kind of mix things up and to vary that area just a touch, see how it kind of brings that area to life. It's because it's the only thing that's green in here now. Maybe I'll make this area down here a little bit green too, like that. Okay, and let's do the same thing over here. There's mostly rocks in here, but I know we'll add a little bit of this hue in here. I'll put it a little bit in the trees too. Kind of anchored things down a little bit, even though this is looking fairly subtle right now. And then I'll hit it with some darker green. Kind of in the shadow areas. There's nothing really definitive. I'm just kind of making it up here. I'm just kind of, there's some greens and I'm kind of going like this in certain areas just to kind of vary that hue, giving it a little bit of dark and light here and there. There's nothing like super strategic about it. Okay, I'm just kind of varying it. And if you have a little variation in there, that's good. It's not going to matter if you hit it like in an area like, oh my God, that little 16th advantage should have been, light, but I colored it. It's not like that, anything that specific. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm going to, now that I, have things, I kind of go in and I'm, that we got a lot of the colors down, I can kind of go in and refine. Like here, I'm kind of adding a little bit more of this darker blue, like right around that shoreline. I'm not a huge amount. It's like 5 or 10%, a little bit darker like that. And let's see. Okay, there's a lot of vibrant tone right up in here. I think I'm going to go in and add a little bit of some alcohol pen yellow. See, this whole area in here was kind of like this tone. Now I'm going in and I'm just varying. I'm not trying to change the colors. I'm largely putting yellow over red, so it looks a little bit more orange. But I'm going in here like this, and I'm just kind of increasing the intensity of the trees here a little bit. Intensity is brightness, okay, which is not lightness. Lightness is a matter of light and dark. Brightness is a matter of kind of intense and dull. So I'm making it a brighter tone. And we can do that a little bit down here in the grassy areas too. I'm going to bring in a little bit of a, kind of a bluish tinge, I think, on her paddle board here. All right, now I'm going to bring in a little bit more richness to the blue here. I'm putting a light blue over the top of the dark blue. It doesn't make a light blue in there because I'm putting it over the top of it. It just makes it a little bit richer. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, coming along, these scenes, which they tend to do when you have the backgrounds kind of already, someone's already taken care of the background kind of considerations for you, and you can concentrate on, little things like highlighting or, the composition for sure. I love details. I love putting in little details and just kind of making something seem a little bit, a little bit more dimensional. Playing this game of kind of push and pull of the imagery. So you darken something, it kind of pushes it back, and then you can highlight it or something like that and make it look more rounded. Stuff like that's really fun to do. Okay, let's see. Colored the pier here a few tones of brown. Now I'm going in, just kind of doing that thing like I did in the trees. It's sort of a really dull peach-ish color. Beige. But, just going in there and kind of giving it a little bit more fullness. I don't know, maybe it's like 5% fuller looking or something like that. But, all those little things like that. If you do like little tiny kind of improvements or, like I said, refinements, maybe. That's the better word for that. Cumulatively, it kind of all adds up, 5% here, 5% there, 2% or whatever. Okay, well, let's see. Let's take a look at this cabin here. All right, so this is all kind of a similar tone. I'm going to add a little bit more darkness to one side of the cabin. Let's use some of this black here. All right, so the cabin's, getting a little bit more integrated with the surroundings. There's a little bit more contrast in there now. Let's see. I'm going to take out my pastel pencil and we'll add a little bit of lighting into it. This is a very kind of soft light. It's pastel. Even though it's on a pencil, it's still fairly light. So it's just kind of making it a little bit lighter like that. It's making the cabin seem a little bit more kind of rounded, I guess. On tops of some of these rocks. You shade the lower portion, and then you can highlight the upper portion. We'll also do this with our pastel pencils. I mean, acrylic paint pens. It's kind of appropriate using the pastel pencil in here too. It's the background I believe is all pastels, so it's like bringing in that same type of element. into the scene. Element, texture. Yellows. Let's see, let's hit it with some orange. Boy, I hardly ever use an orange acrylic paint pen. Okay. Now, over here in the red, I'm guessing this orange paint pen, I was going to say it'll really show up. It doesn't show up too much. It's just a little bit lighter in value than the red behind it, but hopefully you can see that a little bit, that variation there in lightness. So it makes those trees a little bit more dimensional and textured too, you know, from the use of dimension. We'll go with something like this. I think this color scheme here. It's I don't know. It's a color scheme, but it's the what we're doing is it's a lighting, highlighting scheme. Again, the light is coming from this side, so I'm kind of highlighting the side of the trees facing the light. A little bit more highlights in the trees that are lighter. Okay. Okay, so see those trees really starting to come alive. They're starting to kind of like dance in the, not to be overly poetic here, but they just, this shimmer, they kind of brought to life. It's like light is hitting them now a little bit more. We can put some of this down in the grassy area too, or whatever it is, mossy area. Kind of beige color. This color looks pretty light in value. Maybe I won't go all the way to white. We'll see. going over some of the pastel in here. It's kind of that loose pastel powder can clog up your pen a little bit. So I could go and spray seal that though, before adding this paint pen in here, and that would probably be a good idea. But I'm being lazy here and just going over the loose pastel dust. All right, now, one of the things that's missing, kind of a little bit more structure with a few highlights, is my cabin, so we'll go and do that. Let's see, like there's these rails in here. Get that kind of drawn in like so. I'll bring out the, what do you call those, pylons or something? That. Maybe a little bit of this rooftop we can kind of bring out a touch, like so. So all those little extremities like that, you put a little highlight on it, it looks so much more dimensional that way. Yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. Now that I put in a few little highlights, I think I'm gonna just make the rooftop a little bit more varied with a little bit of shading on it. Since I put highlights in the front, I'm kind of adding a little shade to the back, I think. Something like that. I don't know, maybe it could be some shadows from, some of these trees or something like that coming into the picture. If your figure's stamped out a little bit lighter than black and you want to darken them a little bit, you can do that. Okay. Now we can go for a little bit more brilliance and have like these light beams kind of coming in here, which might be kind of interesting. I like bringing in kind of some of these paper schemes, from the kind of from the background into the foreground, like that. Now, one of the things that I'll do, though, for sure, is bring a little bit of a kind of illuminated mist and fog into the piece. Let's take a look and see what that looks like before I bring in like heavy light beams. I say heavy, I mean, we could put in a very light one, but they're very dramatic and they really stand out quite a bit, those beams. They almost become kind of the, oh, I don't know, kind of the main, kind of, I'd say attention-getting focal point of a piece when you have those beams in there. I think. Okay, so adding in this mist in here like this. Just like illuminated moisture in the air. Just changes the spirit of a piece. It makes things seem a little bit softer. And I don't know, there's a little bit more kind of essence to the piece with doing this. Everyone likes kind of soft things. You don't want to have to make everything soft, but you just make them a little bit softer in some areas, and it can really add to the kind of the emotional quality of a piece. All right, so kind of adding it like right around the shoreline, like that. Let's bring a little bit up into the cabin too, I think. Or, you know, the base of the cabin maybe. Like that. I'll put a little bit of lighting on her paddleboard like that. Maybe in the front of it where the light is hitting it. And I almost feel like maybe bringing in some of those light beams or a couple of them in there. It can kind of be a, I don't know, kind of a sister piece to the scene that I did yesterday. You know, maybe bringing like a beam across there. It almost looks like there are kind of these beams in there already, just from the patterning. That it's like directional lighting that Deanna's already kind of added in here. So here's that kind of area in the background like that. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to reiterate. Okay, so I'm going to make my focal point like right here. So what you do is you just kind of designate some little area in your piece, in your light source. And always kind of have your light emanating from that location or that point. Okay, oops. Just hold it nice and steady. Okay. I'm going to make these beams kind of subtle. Now see this right here? I'm not going to fill in this whole thing. I'm going to kind of put a little bit of tone at the top of it. And I'll dissipate it. I'll put a little bit more over here and less over here so it looks like the beam is kind of tapering off a little bit. See like that? See how subtle that is like that? So it's like if you don't, you're not sure if you want to add something in, you can just do a really, light version of it like that. So you can get it in there, but it's not like this really obtrusive type of thing. For those that haven't watched my videos, one of the things that I find in applying this type of pigment, white pigment ink with a cotton ball, is use 100% cotton ball. Otherwise, I don't know, the cotton ball doesn't accept the ink easily. So there's not as much ink to transfer if you're using kind of those more acrylic style of cotton balls. The acrylic style ones, they seem really like super soft, but they just don't, and they are, but they just don't really apply ink as nicely. Okay, now that beam in there, I'm not quite as happy with that, so I'm gonna wipe some of it off and make it a little bit more subtle, okay, like that, okay. So this ink doesn't dry so fast, so you can kind of like break it up. It's really just very, very, like I said, subtle, okay. Let's go with like one or two more beams on the water here. So a really faint beam like that. It's really narrow up there, so I'm trying to get a little bit in there. There we go. And let's do another really faint and subtle one. It's so subtle, I don't even know if I could see it right there. I think that is fine though. Let's go with that. Now I have all these beams up here, so what I do is I add in a little bit more pigment ink, like white pigment ink, and I add it in there. It's not a big blob of pigment ink. I'm just kind of like dusting a little bit more in there to make it kind of glow and to just kind of soften up some of those, hard angles in there. I mean, it's not super hard because it's, they're fairly light, but it just makes them a little bit more kind of graceful, without having like hard edges in our piece. Okay, let's put a little bit more tone right in here. As this white pigment ink dries, it tends to get a little bit more see-through, so it looks a little bit darker than when it's freshly applied. In other words, the colors show through a little bit, more as it dries. Kind of putting her legs a little bit. And I'll put her paddle in a little bit more of this fog here. Yeah, it's a little bit too much. Wipe some of it off like that. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm tempted to do that same quote stamp up here. And it'll really make it much more of a kind of a sister scene to the one from yesterday. And they both have piers in them, so I'm going to get that quote stamp. Okay. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. Doing a test print here. Anytime my word stamps go in, I always want to get them, make sure that I've inked up enough, make sure my pad has enough ink on it, and I'm applying the pressure in the right spots. Okay. Forgive my head here. seems to, like I said in my video from yesterday, it seems like these quote stamps go really well with pre-printed papers. All right, so this here, I mean, you can spray seal it. We do have a little bit of the pastel pencil in there, so I'll probably spray seal. And then let's get this matted off and let's take a look and see what the finished card looks like. All right, here's our piece. A little double matte here, a little white and gold around the edges like that. And I think that finishes up our piece. Oh, look at that. This is white pigment ink here, but it's the white brilliance, so it has a little bit of a sheen to it. You know, that it's more reflective at certain angles, catching the light, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I knew that, but I never really noticed it as much as like right here. Those beams are really strong like that, but then you go like that, it's much more subtle. At certain angles, it's like barely visible. So, a little bit of fun like that. Let me see here. Let's add a little bit of a shimmer to this water like this. A little bit of a white acrylic paint pen. Again, one of those little subtle little things that's kind of fun to add to a piece. Have these beams coming in here now, so it's like, oh, maybe we can add a little bit more like highlighting on some of those objects that are kind of right in the path of the light beam. Something like that. All right. So, I want to thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the card. And we want to thank Deanna for creating these really cool background pieces that make kind of getting into, you know, some of those fun little aspects of stamping for me in terms of, you know, just lighting and shade and kind of atmosphere. You know, just, you know, if we have a certain amount of time to do that, if you have time, then you can do the background kind of skies and things like that for sure, which are really fun to do. But if you just want to kind of play around with some of those other little things, little nuancy types of things, this is a really fun way to establish kind of a composition and be, you know, more than halfway there in terms of finishing a piece. You don't even really have to do the level of detailing that I did, but again, that's the types of things that I really enjoy doing a lot of the time. So it's just like kind of getting into it. And then again, it opens up some different types of considerations, and I learn from new techniques a lot of times from using these papers. So like this cabinet right here, I didn't used to like cut out things and then paste them into my settings. You know, usually you wouldn't have to do that because you're starting off with like a neutral background, white oftentimes, you know, so you stamp things out and then you color things in. But since the coloring is already established on a lot of these backgrounds, and if you want something light on top of it, then this little cutout type of thing's a fun way to go. And I don't know, it kind of broadens my perspective. And, you know, when I started thinking about it, I was going to just stamp them out on a white piece of paper, you know, with something, I don't know, whatever it was. But it's like, oh, why don't we use, you know, like colored textured papers, you know, and it would kind of already inherently have certain types of qualities in there. And you don't have to, you know, go in there and add all those different tones if they're already inherently in some of these types of papers that we can use to stamp on. So I don't know, it's like fun little things, you know, kind of adding new little techniques into the mix that you can pull from and access and utilize in future types of scenes that aren't necessarily only on pre-printed papers. You can do that on other types of things. We can print something out on something, a certain type of paper, and then if you want kind of something contrasted with it, like if we stamped on gold paper, but we want that cabin to be rustic looking, we can put that cabin in there just in the antique paper or something like that. So I don't know, it might open up some new possibilities and looks for our pieces, which is always kind of fun to do and employ in scenic stamping because there's so many different, techniques that we can utilize with that type of genre. All right, thanks again.